Good evening, everybody. Chef Kareen and I welcome you to week 4 here in CU 132. We hope that everybody had a fantastic Thanksgiving break. I see some smiles out there. I hope that the turkey was awesome, but sometimes those breaks just don't seem long enough. I could go for another week myself, but in this industry, we just keep moving forward and we just keep making it happen. Hey, week 3 was pretty exciting. I actually went out and ate dim sum. I have to admit, I could not resist. And I know that we had a lot of really awesome assignments that came through. Chef Kareen, you want to share?
Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Let's push through together. We just have a couple more weeks. That turkey made us so tired, I'm sure. Well, week 3. Chef, seems like everyone loves egg rolls.
I
Egg
know.
rolls, egg rolls, egg rolls.
We should just design the whole course around egg rolls.
I had a few that, ventured out to the shumai or the dumplings. But for the most part, the egg rolls, I am going to, well, let me just talk about them for a little bit. So, in the last live session, we discussed about the wrappers. The cellophane wrappers, those clear wrappers, are not for the egg rolls. Those are more for spring rolls when you're using fresh vegetables, right? You can't fry them. Even though some tried, just remember that. And if you can't find your ingredients, always reach out to your chefs because they can give you, or we can give you, alternatives. Like chef recommended to one student that they can use the tortilla. Close enough, right? Okay. So don't forget your self-ID photos, not just the upper. We want to see your footwear also. So if any of you are missing that, like I may have given you a little note, take a picture and pop it in, right? And the narrative, when it comes to the influencers, we're looking for, let's say you were in China. China is huge. China also has a lot of inside influences going all the way back centuries. So you can list that as historical. You can also list religion, right? And then sometimes there are people from other countries that pass through and leave influences, like in China, India, for one. All right. So things like that. That's what we're looking for. Etiquette and so forth, you're doing pretty good. And I must remind you about your makeups. You want to get those makeups in as soon as you can. You don't want to wait till the last week or so of the semester. Okay. All right. So let's take a look at these fantastic photos. So, like I said, egg rolls.
Wow.
Egg rolls. But look at the presentations. You have pops of color. This one had a family gathering. Here's the shumai, the dumplings in the distance. And then notice he got a little fancy with the chinaware, right? But look at the egg rolls, played with the knife cuts here, all right?
Nice.
And then here's the sauce. You spoon this on and then you drag your spoon a little bit, right? So here's nicely fried. The colors were really nice. A few of you used cabbage just to lay underneath your egg rolls. What I suggest to you, because this is just 2 plate ups, right? If you were doing this out in the industry, you may have so many orders of this. So you don't want to just take a leaf of cabbage every time and place it on a plate. Maybe shred some cabbage, like 1 leaf can probably serve 4 plates, right? Always think about your bottom line. And then I think we have someone that's a gourmet. Look at this,
I
chef,
love that.
right? Very nice. And that's a cucumber.
Yeah.
Okay, so now let's take a look at the next slide. Not trying to move. I'll make it happen.
Nice.
Oh, it looks like it's, sorry, I went the wrong way. Okay, lots again. It's fine. You using the egg rolls, you know. What I do want to point out, and we talked about this last week, when you're doing the dumplings or the shumai, remember the filling has to be raw. You combine it, but then you take a little portion and cook it just so that you can taste what your filling is going to taste like. But you don't cook the filling and then put it into the wontons. This all gets cooked in your steamer. All right, very nice presentations. What do you think, Chef?
I am really impressed. You know what? It's kind of interesting. We were having a talk the other day about new people entering into the industry, and they were talking about attitude, aptitude, and ability in being the three key components. And after I look at these pictures, there's a lot of attitude, aptitude, and ability here on these plates, and that's really impressive. So great
Look at the pleat in here.
I know that dumpling is incredible.
Very nice.
And I love the garmage work with the cucumber too.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so Chef, I'm throwing it back to you. I'm going to stop sharing. There
Ladies and gents, that was absolutely fantastic. And I know Chef Kareen gets really excited when we get that kind of quality work coming across, because it is a reward for us to see everybody produce that. So thank you very, very much. Hey, we are entering into week 4 of a 6-week course. And so we need to be conscientious. Don't slow down at this point. This is a time to really get pushing, because there's still lots of learning that's taking place. Don't shortchange yourself. So get the full amount of it. It's only going to help you out once you get into industry. So great job so far, everybody. It's really cool seeing everybody kind of advance along, and it's so much fun to see. Ladies and gents, great job for China. Absolutely fantastic work this week. We are heading down the street to Japan. But before we do that, let's take a look at our class page this week here in CU 132. For week 4, there's some really cool articles up here. I highly recommend you take a few minutes and you kind of stroll through these. You know, the Japanese cooking utensils, from the wok to the strainers to everything else, are absolutely fantastic to get to know. We actually use some of them in the commercial kitchens. Chef Kareen, do you like cooking with a wok? Yeah. Wait. What was that?
I do. It's a sort of a one-pot experience, cooking experience. But you have to learn how to control, you know, every aspect of it and pay attention to your heat source.
And when we do vegetables on our hotline, and I love keeping it, because the wok, that thing can stay smoking hot all night long, and it does. Once they become seasoned, they pick up such a great flavor into the vegetables. I love that.
Totally.
And, yeah, and then definitely the history of the Japanese culture and cuisine. Great article to take a look into. There's a tremendous amount of culinary history that developed there specifically because of their geographical location. I know Chef Kareen and I have talked to everybody over the past couple of weeks about how that influences a culture's food by where they are at and what they eat. Obviously surrounded by the coastal areas, you could probably guess. Seafood is a huge part of their cuisine, but how they incorporated that into different soups and stews is absolutely fantastic. And then we have 2 knowledge checks this week. Don't forget, everybody, you can take those knowledge checks as many times as you like, and only the highest score is going to stay. So everybody, please get 10s on those. And thank you, everybody, for being here for the live session. Chef Kareen, I do have to make a comment. I yielded or caught a lot of questions this week about this cooking assignment for the dim sum. And 99% of the questions were because the people didn't catch the live session. So they had questions about techniques and what to use for the assignment. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Pass it along. Make sure that everybody watches the live session archive. Very, very important. And then this week in the kitchen, hang on a sec. Before I say this, I'm going to file a disclaimer because my enunciation of the Japanese language is horrible. So if anybody is extremely familiar with this terminology, I apologize in advance. There's no offense intended. I just can't do it. So this week in the kitchen, we have two different options. We have the terra katsudan, which is one of my most favorite dishes, which is kind of a pork cutlet. And then we have a sushi rice bowl. And then you'll notice right down here for any vegans out there, there's a dashi stock recipe as well. I prefer the chicken stock because you get the collagen and the other vitamins and minerals from it. So that's my preference. However, if you are a vegetarian, there's an option for you. Ladies and gents, let's take a look at what we have going on here in Japan and kind of share with you some of the area. This is the country of Japan. It is comprised of a lot of little islands, as you can see. Obviously very cold up towards the north, near not too far off the coast of Russia. And down here towards the south, it is near the Koreas. And then obviously China, right through the center part of the country. The first region that we want to talk about is up here in the north, heavily driven by seafood. They make a really cool dish there, and that's called hot pot soup. And it's made from fresh local vegetables and salmon. Salmon traditionally comes from very cold waters because it's a fish that is high in fat. They also add tofu, and then they also do a dish of barbecued lamb. So that's up here in the north. And then as we move down towards the south, right, this is Shikoku, which is one of the smallest of Japan's 4 main islands. And it's not too far from where the famous Wagyu beef comes from, that we're hearing a lot about these days, which pretty much is, it takes up a small region right here by Kyoto, towards the south side of the country. But they make a dish, and they do a lot with bonito, which is a very small tuna. It's a member of the tuna family. They're only about, I would say, about 18 inches long. The flesh is a dark color. And they also make bonito fish flakes from it, from the dried fish, which has a tremendous amount of naturally occurring monosodium glutamate, which helps pop the flavors in the dishes that they add it to. So you will see that quite a bit. And from this region as well, they also do a lot of udon noodles, which is one of my most favorite noodles. This is a picture of udon noodles right here. Chef Corinne, you like udon noodles?
I do.
They're one of my most favorite. Sometimes just by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Totally. You can just use it with a nice little sauce and just go for it.
A light broth, some great vegetables, some bok choy, and you're set. Right? Our next region, ladies and gents, which is kind of the center of the country, is Honshu, which is this region right in here. They serve a lot of eel and miso katsu, which is something semi-similar to the tear that we're going to be making for this week. It's a fried pork cutlet, and it's served with a miso-based soup. And they also serve a traditional dish there, which is wild duck, and very, very popular in that region. And then down towards the south, just a little bit, is Okinawa, right, which is a very famous Japanese city. And they are considered to be one of the blue zones in this world. Blue zones are, there's 5 of them throughout the world. There's a couple in Italy, there's one in Greece, there's another one in Spain, one in Japan, and the other one is in Costa Rica. They have the world's longest longevity. So in those areas, they have more people that have reached the age of 100 than any other parts of the world. And Okinawa is considered one of those blue zones. And they attribute that a lot to the diet that they eat. And that diet is traditionally very high in seafood, which has done that. They serve Goya, which is a bitter melon that's stir-fried with egg, tofu, vegetables, and pork. And Goya is considered to be one of those dietary supplements that is to help you add to the years of your life. So I've tried Goya. It's very, very bitter, not the most delicious thing in the world. So those people deserve to live to be over 100 for eating Goya, because it can be quite painful. Ladies and gents, let's talk about some of the seasonal foods. It's really interesting. Japanese cuisine is extremely seasonal, whereas here in the United States, we've kind of become all year round, so to speak. You can go to any restaurant in January and get fresh raspberries. You know, in late December, you can find strawberries, but we know those foods aren't in season. However, in Japan, they take it very specific, and they orchestrate the flavors of their foods to be in conjunction with that present period. So that's something to remember. So during the summertime, they will have a lot of summer-based vegetables, the lighter vegetables, the lower in moisture content vegetables, the tomatoes, et cetera, et cetera. During the fall months, they'll have a lot of squashes, the more hardy vegetables. Into the spring or to the late winter time, they'll do a lot more tubers, heavier vegetables that are a little bit more substantial. So that's how they prepare their menus. And something to remember about Japanese food in general. Everything that they do is designed to enhance the center of the plate, right? So if they are serving a piece of ahi tuna, everything on that plate is designed to enhance the flavor of the ahi tuna. So the bottom line is that they focus on simplicity of their dishes. Whereas in many other cultures will stew, you know, we haven't talked about India yet, but India uses a tremendous amount of seasonings in their food to create a very unique flavor. Whereas Japan focuses on that simplicity and central item to create the flavor. So very, very important to remember that about Japanese flavors. Now, when I think about the flavors of Japan, garlic and savory are basically what pops into mind, right? They like to boil or braise a lot of foods and sear. And then obviously they like to eat a lot of raw seafoods, and that's where the sushi comes from. So that's very, very important to them. And a lot of their foods are minimally seasoned. So, you know, we have the term unami. We can taste 5 flavors on our palate. We have sweet, sour, bitter, salt, and unami, right, which is the savory flavor. And that's really what we associate with Japanese cuisine, that savory flavor, right? So some of the flavors that they're very, very familiar with are the miso, the soy sauce, the mushrooms, seaweed, bonito flakes. So talking about how they enhance the flavor of the item on the plate. Mushrooms, for example. Mushrooms are not something that we commonly eat by themselves very often, right? And the reason for that is they have a very general unami flavor. I don't know if anybody out there has ever been really hungry before, and all you can do is fixate on that button mushroom that's inside your refrigerator. You're going to run home and you're going to dive into it, and that's going to leave you feeling satisfied. And that's not the way it works. Mushrooms, miso, soy sauce, seaweed, bonito flakes are all very high in monosodium glutamate, which naturally opens up the palate. So traditionally, we'll eat mushrooms in conjunction with something else, and that something else tastes very good. It's also known as MSG. Back in the 70s and 80s, there were certain restaurants that used MSG that was chemically processed, and it gave some people hypertension. However, consumed in its natural form, provides no effect onto the human body. As a matter of fact, each and every one of us in this class right now have approximately 4 pounds of glutamate in your body. And when you take a molecule of sodium and you mix it with a molecule of glutamate, you then create monosodium glutamate. So that is kind of the basis of their cuisine and how they enhance their flavors. They like to use a lot of condiments, from light dipping sauces to citrus, wasabi. And wasabi is kind of an interesting thing that we hear quite a bit about. I'm sure most of us have had it out there. It can be spicy. It can make your nostrils breathe flames. And Although it is a member of the horseradish family, it's not associated with what we traditionally eat here in the United States as being horseradish. It is a different variety within the same family. So that's where it gets its flavor from. You'll also notice pickles here on this list. They do a lot of kimchi and other pickling in that cuisine. The reason they do the pickling is the pickling goes through the fermentation process. The fermentation process then puts a lot of biomes and feeds microbiomes into the gut, which creates a very healthy gut fauna or flora, and will help speed the release of serotonin and aid in the metabolism of foods. So a lot of that stuff is very critical in their cuisines. Does anybody have any questions so far? Anyone? All right, this is kind of cool. Check it out, Japanese traditions in the kitchen. And I think this is really important to share. We have an awesome class here, Chef Corinne, and I think a lot of these folks are gonna jump out into industry and start rocking the house real quick. However, in Japan, it ain't that way, right? You're gonna work in the kitchen for about 10 years before you're allowed to even handle the fish or the meat, which means that you'll be bussing table, doing dishes, serving meals, scrubbing floors, doing whatever else the chef might ask you to do until he feels as though you are competent to touch the fish or the meat. So it is a long journey, the apprenticeship there. So it is something to pay very interesting, very, very, very thoughtful. Japanese cuisine has a very, very high ratio of plant-based foods in comparison, especially to the US, where we are heavily protein-based. That is because they use a lot of broths. Bone broth is extremely critical to your, not only your gut health, but your overall nutrition, because bone broth contains a tremendous amount of vitamins and minerals, and also it is very high in collagen, which takes care of the epidural and your hair, et cetera, et cetera. So they combine that bone broth, the bonito flakes or fish stock, with vegetables to create their dishes. Some interesting etiquette that they have there in Japan. You have to be really, really slurpy when you eat. Isn't that unusual, Chef Corinne? I don't know how many times I've had to, huh?
Yeah, it's like the reverse of what we're taught here.
I know.
Slurping is you're giving them a compliment, letting them know you love the food.
Yeah, it's a
Here,
very
we'll
polite.
get smacked by our parents or somebody for slurping.
I told my kid, my 7-year-old the other day, I said, you're going to Japan if you keep eating your Frosted Flakes like that. It's not right, man. We don't do that. But there, it's part of their culture that when you pick up your chopsticks to eat that udon and that broth that's kind of dripping out, that you slurp it up. And so that's really, really interesting.
They do that even with the noodles, the last noodle, you know, slurp it in.
Slurp it up, yeah. Here, you would be politely excused from the table.
Yeah.
Right? That's not appropriate behavior. Something else they do that's really interesting, it is extremely rude to leave your chopsticks straight up in a bowl of rice. It's a very, very, very rude, derogatory thing. Do not stick your chopsticks and leave them standing in the rice. You might be asked to leave wherever you are. It is not good. So
like death to the chef.
What's that?
Like death to the chef.
Yeah, it is, isn't it? Yeah. So speaking of chefs, they have Gyro, I Dream of Gyro, which has been a Michelin-starred restaurant for many years. If anybody ever gets a chance to watch on Netflix, I Dream of Gyro, J-I-R-O, it is a fantastic program about dedication to the world of culinary arts and his perfectionism. However, he was recently stripped of his Michelin stars at the age of 82, I believe, because he is no longer accepting reservations from the general public. So they knocked him down a notch. Not good, huh? Poor fellow, 82 years old, and they did that to him. Yeah, wrong. All right, ladies and gents, another really interesting tradition they have over there is sake, right? Which is rice wine. It's literally a wine that is made from fermented rice. Let's take a look at something really interesting here, how they serve the sake. You must overflow the cup. Can you imagine doing that with a bottle of Beaujolais Village or a bottle of Opus One at the table, just pouring it until it flows out onto the linen? But however, in Japan, they put that special saucer underneath to catch any potential overflow, and the overflow is considered a sign of generosity. So that's pretty cool. Ladies and gents, we're going to talk about sushi here for just a moment. We're not going to delve into each particular type. However, sushi is a big part of their diet. Here in the United States, it is illegal to serve fresh seafood for raw consumption. All seafood in the United States must be frozen for a minimum of 7 days when being served raw. That's in order to kill any potential parasites. However, in Japan, that is not the case. They eat a lot of fresh raw seafood, which I wish we could do here in the US. And if you ever go to a sushi bar and they're telling you, hey, this ahi is fresh, yeah, gotcha. So Nigeria is one of the most common forms. We see that here a lot in the United States, very, very common. And then tamaki as well, we see it's kind of a cone shape or a cornet. That cornet is made out of seaweed. And then inari is also another very popular variety as well. So sushi there is considered to be an art form. There is a really cool video in this week's PowerPoint presentation. I'm not going to go through the video at this point, but you're certainly welcome to take a look at it on your own if you would like to. All right, ladies and gents, let's move on to the world of Wagyu. Wagyu beef is it's a treat at this point in time. It's a meat that is comes from Japan. It has an extremely intense interior marbling. Remember, the marbling on beef comes in two different forms. The exterior marbling on a primal cut, like a ribeye, or when you have a steak and that New York steak has that fat trim on the outside, that's referred to as HDL or hydrodensity lipoproteins, right? And those are saturated fats. Those are the types of fats that we want to avoid consumption. However, the marbling on the interior of the meat is what we do want to consume. That is referred to as low density lipoproteins, or LDLs. LDLs do not leave deposits in your cardiovascular system or in your arteries, so they are quite healthy fats for you to consume. So Wagyu beef is extremely high in fat, but primarily in the marbling area. If you look at this piece of A5, A5 is the highest grade a prime cut can receive, right? This is a boneless strip loin. Looks like it's about a 5-pound cut, and they want about $1,200 for the actual cut of meat. It's a little bit on the pricey side at this point, right? If you don't have that much money, you can spend 180 bucks here. This looks like it's just a couple of 8-ounce steaks, right? But it is worth every penny should you ever be able to eat that. It's a lot like eating butter. Chef Corinne, have you ever had the A5 before?
I've had, yeah, the Wagyu. Actually,
Yeah.
I was over in Japan.
How was it?
And yeah, I went to Tokyo, Narigato, and Kobe, whereas the cows, the Wagyu cows are known for. Do you know they're massaged? Those cows are spoiled. They drink beer. They even do their nails. Yeah. So they do all of that to create this incredible product, right? Japan was interesting. Tokyo, like I said, I grew up in New York, and we're in Manhattan. We're known for Times Square and the bright lights. But Times Square has nothing on Tokyo when it comes to all of those lights, and it's a small place, but everything is built up. So it was really exciting. Kobe and Narigato, they're kind of like the country. We took the bullet train, and sidebar, who was right in the bullet train at the front? Jackie Chan.
Oh, I love it.
He broke his foot, so we went up to say hello to him. Why I was there that's when I was fashion designer working with the different entertainers. So we would travel, and we were on the bullet train, and I mean that train is like fast, like right. But I saw some of the greenest grass I've ever seen in my life. So if that's what the cows eat, they are really healthy. It was like bluish, like a green blue, just really pretty. But it
Do
was
they
it
do they
was
eat it
exciting.
before? Do they eat it before or after the massage? And is it with beer?
I don't know the order, but I would think they would drink the beer maybe afterwards and have the massage. It's not like, hey, they don't sit the cows in the chairs and pamper them, but their whole routine is just like out of this world. But they create some really incredible product, and the world is loving it.
They really, really do.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've worked quite a bit with Kobe beef. We used to do a tartar dish at
Mhm.
one resort that I was running, and it was a wonderful dish, but it becomes cost prohibitive for
Yeah.
the general public to eat more than once in a great while. So it's a very difficult
Yeah.
dish to sell because of the high cost.
Now the funniest thing, it's actually pronounced Kobe
Uh-huh.
over there, right? But we Americans mess everything up. Like that's where Kobe, the basketball player, he got his name from.
So we should call him Bryant
Kobe.
Kobe. Okay.
We mess everything up.
We're gonna have to talk to
We
his
change
parents about
things
that.
up.
Yeah.
Interesting, right?
How'd we go from talking about beef to NBA players?
Well, it's all in the name.
It is. It is. I buy that. All right. All right, ladies and gents, let's jump back on track here real quick and take a look at some interesting things that they work with over there. Their sushi rice is very, very interesting. It is called Calrose. Traditionally, that's most likely what you're going to see once you get into industry. It's kind of a shorter, fatter rice grain, and it is extremely high in starch. You'll notice that this week's sushi bowl recipe is going to ask you to wash the rice 7 times. So when you initially wash it, you will have that white milky substance. You will drain it, fill it back up, and each time that milkiness will reduce itself. That milkiness is the starch that is found in the rice, so it needs to be washed multiple times. Traditionally, after they cook the Calrose rice or the sushi rice, they'll add a little bit of rice wine vinegar to it to help with the stickiness and to add a little bit of flavor profile as well. Nori is the Japanese name for edible seaweed. Nori strips are quite popular. My daughter was eating some the other day, as a matter of fact. They're really versatile. This week's recipe for the sushi bowl actually calls for a chiffonade of nori to be sprinkled over the top, and I think that really helps pop the flavor. Mirin is also something that is used quite a bit. It's a type of rice wine. It's almost like sake, but it has a much lower alcohol content, and it's also a little bit more on the sweeter side. I like to use it when I'm working with savory items. I add it to demi-glace quite a bit. I do a demi-glace with black garlic and mirin that kind of has a nice savory sweet flavor to it that balances real well with beef. Dashi is a class of stock that's commonly used in Japan. You could use it as the base for miso soup, a clear broth, almost similar to that of a consomme, a noodle broth like Chef Karina and I were talking about earlier with your udon noodles. You could also braise in that liquid as well. It's got a very umami flavor to it, very savory type flavor, very, very, very common in Japanese cuisine. All right, ladies and gents, like we talked about earlier in the class, you do have your choice of 2 different recipes this week. It is an option of one or the other. The first is the Terra Katsudon, which is a really cool dish, and it's something you should consider making for your family one of these nights, because I think it's going to have a pretty wide appeal. Let's take a look at the recipe here. And it's calling for 2 boneless pork chops. And traditionally that comes from the pork loin. The center of the pork loin is where you want to get those pork chops from. You want them down right around a 1/2 inch thick, not too much thicker than that. Make sure that they are consistent in size, because otherwise you're browning, you're working with breadcrumbs this week. And if you have one pork chop that's very thick and the other one's very thin, by the time the thick one gets cooked, the thin one's going to be burned. So make sure that it is consistent in the cuts. And then you're going to have yourself a breading station here. And the breading station will be eggs. You're going to scramble those. You're going to separate those into 2 different containers, because you're going to be using some for the breading, and then you'll be using some towards the end of the recipe, and then flour and panko. Then you'll need a little bit of oil for frying. I highly recommend grapeseed or avocado. It's got a high smoke point to it. And then you're going to need a little bit of stock, about 1.25 cups, soy sauce, mirin, sugar, onion, thinly sliced. If you can't find the mirin, some people might run into that issue. You could, if you can't find sake either. Sake is pretty dry. I've actually seen people take Chardonnay and add a little bit of sugar to it to kind of sweeten it up, and kind of use that as a substitution as well. Chef Kareem, do you have any other suggestions for substitutions for mirin?
I just put that in the chat, but the wine, if I think it was Carrie that asked about the wine. So remember, wine is acidic. So even like an apple cider, right? Because it's acidic, and then you balance it with the sugar, because you need that acid, and then you need the sweetness with it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So about a 1/2 cup of the liquid to about 1 to 2 tablespoons of the sugar will give you that balance.
Very, very important. You want to try to stick with that wine. Try not to vary into any other types, any other forms of acidity, because you're going to lose the flavor profile.
You lose it, yeah. So it's that time again. I'm looking forward to seeing your submissions. Have fun with this. This is going to play up your knife cuts for the sushi bowl, and then also the technique of your frying. Chef will explain a little bit more about the Terra Katsudon and that sauce you're going to make. All right? So I'll see you all next week. I'm looking forward to seeing it, okay? Have a good night.
Bye, Chef Kareem.
Thanks, Chef.
Have a great night.
All right.
Bye-bye. All right, ladies and gents, back to our recipe real quick. So we have the mirin. The onion, make sure that's real consistent as well. That's going to be a julienne cut, the nice thin slices, about 1/8 of an inch thick. Japanese steamed rice. So you could use the Calrose. If you can't find the Japanese steamed rice, you could always use the good old-fashioned American long grain converted rice. Uncle Ben's is my favorite. I love that rice. Green onions sliced on a bias. This cut right up here, you see that they've taken the green onion and they cut, instead of cutting this way traditionally, they cut at an angle, which creates that nice bias cut, which is traditionally associated with Japanese cuisine. And the first thing you're going to do is you're going to set up your breading station, right? A breading station, the breading station will be a bowl of flour, the bowl of half the amount of eggs that the recipe requests, and a bowl of panko. Panko is shaved breadcrumbs, right? It's a Japanese style breadcrumb. If you look at them real close, they're actually shaved at an angle, which helps them to stick to the food real well. Whereas traditional American breadcrumbs are kind of ground into small balls. So that's very, very important to make sure, do your best to try to find those. If you can't, then you can use regular breadcrumbs. So you're going to dip the cutlet into the flour, shake it off, remove the excess, into the egg, remove the excess into the panko, right? While you're doing that, you're going to take a heavy bottom saute pan and you're going to get it warm over medium low, medium heat, depending on how strong your burner is. You're going to want to add a couple tablespoons of oil. Once your pan is hot, you're going to put your pork chops in. If your pan is too cold, it will absorb the oil. If your pan is too hot, it will burn your pork chops before they're cooked. So you want to just drop it in, make sure you've got that nice sizzle, and then lay the whole pork chop in there. You're going to want to cook it for about 5 minutes on each side until it's nice and golden brown. Once your pork is fully cooked, you're going to lay it out on a plate with a paper towel to remove all the excess oil. And then you're going to slice the pork chops into 1-inch thick strips. Do your best to allow your pork chops to cool for as long as possible. The longer you let them cool, the more juice that they will preserve. And then you're going to take your dashi, the remainder of your ingredients, your soy sauce, mirin, sugar, onion, put them all together in the saute pan and bring it to a boil, reduce to a simmer, and then you will add the pork chops back to the pan. And then you're going to turn up the heat, and then you're going to pour the remainder of your egg over the top, and then you will serve it over your rice. It is a fantastic dish. This is a picture of what it should look like up here. This is those nice golden brown pork chops. Does anybody have any questions? All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at the sushi rice bowl. This is the other option for this week. So you're going to cook your sushi rice. Very, very important. Make sure you rinse it at least 7 times to remove that white, milky, starchy substance, right? Fill it up with cool water, drain it. Fill it up with cool water, drain it. Repeat that 7 times until the water is nice and cool. Then you're going to take a cup of water, place it in a pot over high heat, bring to a boil, and then reduce to a simmer. So you're going to put the rice into a pan, add your water, bring it to a boil, turn it down to a simmer, and then let it simmer for about 15 minutes. That's about how long. Make sure you're checking that rice to make sure it doesn't dry out. You're going to remove it from the heat and let it relax for a little bit. While your rice is relaxing, you're going to combine your vinegar, sugar, salt in a small pot. And then you're going to warm it up to dissolve that sugar, and then put the rice into a bowl. And then you're going to put about 1/4 of that vinegar mixture over the rice. And then you're going to work it in. You can use a plastic spatula, or you can use your fingers, and then add another quarter, and another quarter until it all gets worked in there. And this way, this rice has that nice bath in the vinegar mixture. And then you're going to assemble it with these ingredients, right? You can use imitation crab. That's no problem. You don't have to go out and buy fresh Dungeness crab for this exercise. If you can't find crab and you want to use shrimp, go ahead and use shrimp. If you can't find shrimp and you just want to use vegetables, by all means, use just vegetables. Nice julienne carrot. Very important to have consistent knife cuts. Cucumbers, thinly sliced. Avocado, sliced. Nori sheets julienne. We just talked about what the nori sheets are. Those are the seaweed sheets. This is some nori right up here in the corner. Sesame seed. And then if you like, you can make some spicy mayo, spicy mayonnaise. You could use sambal, or you could use sriracha. I prefer sambal. I think it's got a little bit of a better flavor. Sambal is spelled S-A-M-B-A-L. It's from Taiwan. It's a red chili paste. I like to stir that into mayonnaise with a little bit of fresh lime juice, and it makes a really good sauce. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right, ladies and gents, let's take a look at our assignment for this week, our assignment requirements. All right, both have the self-identification photos, both have sanitation buckets, both require proper mise en place. We like to see the mise en place prepped out, lined up, ready to go. Not the bottle of mirin, but actually the portion of mirin, very, very important. And then for the sushi rice bowl, we need a pitcher pouring off the cloudy water to make sure that you removed all of that starch. And then for the last rinse, a pitcher of the clear water coming off the rice, very important. Pitcher of the finished cooked rice. Rice dressed with vinegar. Remember, we're going to add that a quarter at a time, quarter at a time, quarter at a time. If you add it all at once, it'll absorb into that particular area and it'll be very unusual to flavor. Make sure your knife cuts are looking good if you choose to do that dish. And then 2 identical bowls. And then for the Tarakat Sudan, your breading station with flour, egg, and panko. Breaded cutlets. Cutlets cooking in that oil, right? Make sure it's not too hot, not too cold, right around 350 degrees. You only want those cutlets, the oil to come up just a little bit over the bottom of it. They don't need to be swimming in there. You're not deep frying. And then prepared stock for the cutlets, right? That's going to be the chicken stock or the dashi. And then the cutlets in the stock with the egg over the top. And then 2 identical plates showing the final product. And ladies and gents, don't forget that narrative. It is critical that we have a good narrative. Ladies and gents, any questions? Is everybody tired? Is it late? Yeah, it's late here too. All right, ladies and gents, I think this is a great live session. I think we covered a lot of grounds. If anybody has any questions, make sure you reach out and let us know. We're here to help you. And I will post tonight's presentation onto the class page so you could have that as a resource. And I hope everybody has a fantastic week. We look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.